Hey folks, I'm Tim Freitas from the Garden of English, and I hope that you are quite well.
How you doing?
One of the most common essay types that exists, whether you're taking a college lit class, AP Lit, or even many state standardized tests, is the literary argument question. These types of questions give you a thematic topic or a literary element, and then ask you to choose a book that you have read in or out of class and discuss how the book relates to the prompt at hand. What's typically hardest about this, though, is that you have to write an essay about a book that's not right in front of you. What's also potentially hard about a prompt like this is if you can't think of a title that fits the prompt very well. I've already made a video about how to better remember the literature that you've read, and it looks like this. And it's linked in the description right below this actual video. But that's not what we're going to begin attacking here today. Instead, we're going to focus all of our attention on how to accurately leverage a literary argument prompt, which happens to be question 3 on the AP Lit exam. And we want to learn how to do this to help you write the best response possible. For this video, I'm going to rely on a prompt that actually comes from the Macbeth packet in the GOE Lit Support materials. Lit Support is an interface that offers teachers access to digital and print video guides for all of my YouTube videos, which happen to make perfect subplans, by the way. And teachers also have access to 10-question multiple choice tests and answers with rationales for all 9 units of the course and exam description. All of them come with writing prompts too. There's a full practice exam with sample essays, self-assessment rubrics, and scoring commentary. There are specialty prompt packets that have a question 1, question 2, and question 3 for popular works like Hamlet and Macbeth and Frankenstein and Gatsby and more. And it even includes every Garden of English poster file that you can print off as you see fit. The best part is that the materials grow as I do, so it's a living document. It's alive. It's alive. We add to it pretty consistently. If you're interested in checking out this resource, you can find a link for it in the description or even right here. Anyway, I'm going to show you the adapted prompt that we're going to work with for this question 3 series, and then we're going to check out how to break it down to prepare you for success. Take a look at the prompt. Awesome. So imagine this is the prompt that you get on exam day. Let's go over 4 steps that it will take to really break this down so that you can make sure that you AP.
Excuse me, what?
That is, attack the prompt so you can answer the prompt. Whenever you get an open-ended prompt, the first step you absolutely must take is to record the topic or literary element that it wants you to focus on. This is to keep your focus on the topic of the prompt. You want to write it in huge letters somewhere, and in my case, I'm going to put it in an organizer that looks like this. You can find a blank organizer just like this linked in the description right below this video. It's right next to the like button and the subscribe button and the channel member button and the link where you can grab awesome homemade Garden of English shirts like this one. Clicking on any and all of those buttons and links will help the Garden of English continue to be able to create content for viewers like you. Anyway, documenting the prompt topic may seem like a really obvious thing to do, but I can't tell you how many times my students respond to prompts and don't even talk about the topic of the prompt that the essay is meant to be about.
You're missing the point.
Just ask your lit teacher how often this happens, and I bet your teacher will corroborate this nonsense.
So you concur.
But based on our prompt, I just need to write the word guilt in large letters right in the step 1 box. Now, if I write my essay and I don't see the word guilt or its effects show up in my thesis and all of my body paragraphs, I will know that I have missed the mark. Folks, on test day, you don't want to miss the mark. So make sure that you don't by taking this easy step. Also know, though, that sometimes prompts will ask you to write about specific literary elements like setting or a certain type of character, like a villain or a seldom seen character. But whatever it is, whatever the prompt asks you to focus on, make sure you identify it here and keep it preeminent in your mind. Great. Now that you've taken care of that, it's time to move on to step 2. And this is the identification stage. You want to look at the part of the prompt that tells you to select your book. In this section, you want to circle every ambiguous element and turn it into a what question that needs to be answered by you. The reason why I'm going to make questions start with the word what is because they are so much easier to answer than questions that begin with the word how or why. What I mean here will be clearer if I model it. Notice how there's a line in the prompt that reads, either from your own reading or from the list below, choose a work of fiction in which a character in some way, consciously or subconsciously, feels guilt after experiencing the consequences of his or her own actions or choices. I'm going to first look at the language that says choose a work of fiction. Then I'm going to ask this question. What is a work of fiction that I have read that best relates to the topic of this prompt? In this case, and for the future videos in this particular series, I'm going to be using Macbeth for my example. So, I'll fill in the title of Macbeth, the author as William Shakespeare, and the genre that I'd fill in as play. Cool, but I'm not done with step 2 in the identification phase here. I need to continue to where I'm going to see where the prompt mentions a character who in some way consciously or subconsciously feels guilt after experiencing the consequences of his or her own actions or choices. Here, I can generate a bunch of questions based on what's vague. I can ask the following. What character consciously or subconsciously feels guilt? What are the consequences the character faces due to his or her own actions or choices? What are the character's actions or choices that bring about the consequences and the guilt? The importance of these questions is that they outline what needs to be answered in my thesis and throughout the essay to make sure that I respond accurately to this prompt. So now I know exactly what I'll need to develop in my writing. Once I'm done with the identification stage, I'll move on to step 3, which is identifying what I'm commanded to do by the prompt. This command will always start with the word analyze and go to the end of the sentence. This is a pretty easy step in the prompt breakdown process, but it's important that you do it because it reminds you that you are commanded to analyze the book that you choose.
I command you.
It doesn't say summarize, it doesn't say describe, it says analyze. In our case, I'm going to write out analyze how the character's experience with guilt contributes to an interpretation of the work as a whole. That's the command. Now that I've documented that in my organizer, analysis is going to be at the forefront of my mind. And it's important that you generate from here what I call the conquer question. And that's going to be step 4 in the prompt breakdown process. In this step, we're going to create one final question or one set of questions that we need to answer in our thesis and throughout our paper to make sure that we really address the prompt well. In this case, we are going to go into our command language and ask what questions based on what is still ambiguous, and then we're going to recognize what we need to substitute in from our book. For this particular prompt, I'm going to focus on the language that says character's experience with guilt and the language that says interpretation of a work as a whole. Still vague. I now have 2 questions that I can generate. What is the character's experience with guilt? And what is the interpretation of the work as a whole? Steps 2 and 4 have now provided me with specific questions that I need to address in order to best answer the prompt. I want to give you one last parting bit of advice. That final question about the interpretation of the work as a whole, do you know what that actually means? If not, I want to help you. What it's asking is for you to explain how whatever you've chosen to write about based on the topic of the prompt influences other elements of the story and helps convey the story's theme. So in order to answer this part of that question, I'm going to give you a list of other questions that you can ask yourself so you can see how the topic of the prompt influences the interpretation of the work as a whole. They're listed in the organizer, but they're also about to show up here. Analysis requires you to identify elements, break down where these elements are seen in a text, and then explain how these elements function throughout the story. So you need to make sure that your essay fulfills all of this. I just showed you how to break down the question 3 prompt to leverage it, but if you want to learn how to really write this essay starting with a strong thesis, you're going to want to check out what's about to pop up on your screen.